I'm Quinn Ranahan, and I teach 7th and 8th grade math at Roots International Academy. I don't even know where to start, Mike, but as most of you probably know, our school is closing in 2 weeks. The parents were informed in December, and then we were closed January 28th with a 6-1 vote. Yeah, I'm not going to get emotional. I'm not going to do the whole personal story, but I think some things that I learned personally from like our organizing and our strategies is, first of all, 6 weeks isn't long enough. And with a high teacher turnover, we finally had stable teachers there that were wanting to stay, and then like all of this happened and we didn't even know what to do. But I think that we were just getting to like finding where the pockets were for like Shanti and like where to get into their pockets and where they were, and then it happened really fast. And so I kind of wish that we had known like more of the lay before we got there. Yeah, I don't really know what to say right now, but
and what about with the students and parents and community and getting them involved?
Yeah, I mean, our students, it's really interesting. If you saw any of the videos or were at any of them, were not trained. They were not trained on anything, which I think speaks to like how we teach our students at Roots. But we just had conversations with each other. We tried to phone bank parents as much as possible so that we could reach out. And what was the other part you said? Students, yeah, we mobilized our students, the teachers did for the most part, and brought our students wherever we were going. And I think the beauty of it was the teachers that came together that were actually behind the scenes most of the time. And then we had some really strong parents that, you know, told their stories, so those got out. I don't know what to say right now, sorry y'all. And what else? We actually did end up meeting with Rob Bonta, and that's something that I wish that I learned in this process. Was we did meet with Rob Bonta in his office. He is the assemblyman for our district, and you gotta get them to be public. Like, they wanted everything to be behind closed doors, right. And we could not get them to go public, and I think that's something that moving forward we need to be more, like, we have to pressure the politicians more, because you saw him standing there like May 22nd, you know, he's like all this stuff, and I'm like, but you sat in my classroom and said we're gonna fight for you, and then when it really came down to it, he did it. Like, CCPA is expanding, they are not taking our students. That is the end of the story. Like, it is a displacement. Our students are not going to CCPA, which is on our campus. So our school is closing, their school is expanding. It is a racial battle, 100%. Like, our school is 35% black students, theirs is 11%. And they're not taking our students. And to not tell that story is also something that hasn't been told. And I think we really need to pressure our politicians more, because he sat in our classroom, he sat in my classroom, he sat in Ms. Jordan's classroom, and we had a meeting with the district and Rob Bonta and all of his staff members, and still nothing changed.
He sat on the bargaining too.
Yeah, and he sat on the bargaining. And we all know where that ended. And so I think that, I don't know, we have to get there faster and quicker, and we have to make it open, like make them publicize like what they're doing and what they're actually saying, because it was just a lot of bullshit.
Yeah, so the commonality that I'm hearing with us is the short lead time. And this is what really outraged me last year. The only reason we heard about this co-location offer was because Nicole Browning, who was our REXO, our regional executive director, was leaving. She knew she was leaving the district. So, and she liked our school, and so she didn't have to worry about her job being on the line. So she told us what was happening, and she helped us organize community meetings in those 2 weeks. Going back to what you said about the union, I approached our union president last year, the previous president, and asked her, so why is it we didn't know about this? And she said, well, you know, we don't want to tell people about all the co-location offers because they're not all serious offers, and we don't want people to panic. And that just feeds into what the district wants. They want this stuff to slide under the radar. They don't want the community to get hot under the collar about it. They really can't stand bad publicity. They don't like seeing themselves on TV or in the paper with angry people around them. I mean, some of you anyway have seen what happens when we get in there and start yelling in the school board meeting. They flee. They don't want any of that. So they really want to just slide this stuff under. And so I agree with Mike that it's crucial for the union to get involved in making sure that these efforts are publicized immediately. It's also crucial for the union to get involved in insisting on clear and negotiated guidelines for how these co-locations offers are made. And I've had arguments with some of the people in this room about this because they say any kind of negotiation means that we are saying, well, some charters are okay and others are not. And okay, that's one way to look at it, but if you look at it that way, what we end up with is 2 weeks notice, 6 weeks notice. We have to have negotiated time frames and negotiated requirements for notification of schools, or negotiated requirements for schools to be able to, for union members and school leadership to accompany the charter school people when they come on these tours. It has to be in there. Another thing that's really important for Prescott, back in 2004 when we were first told, if you don't vote to charterize, we're going to close your school. That was our school board member, our school board representative who told us that. Back then, the first thing we did was we turned to the community. And Prescott community, they don't stress. They don't come out for anything, but they come out for their school. When their school is under attack, they come out. And it was the community that helped us fight that off. Also, what helped us fight it off was saying we're not just going to listen to what the district is telling us we have to do. We're gonna do things the way we know Prescott community needs. And that made a big difference for us. It's really important to stick just elbow to elbow with your community and ask, talk to them, what kind of school do you want? Do you want this school here? What do you want this school to look like? And then fight from there. But having had that experience back in 2004, when this happened again last year, we brought the community in immediately, and again, made a huge difference. The board member from American Indian, actually, she got wind of our meeting, and she came to the meeting and said, no, we don't want your school, no, we never wanted any, no, we don't want any rooms at Prescott. And she made it sound like, oh, it's because we love Prescott, and we know Prescott does right by black and brown kids. But actually, when they were offered this, so they didn't accept the offer. When they were offered the rooms again this year at Prescott and at Hoover.
And at East Oakland.
Yeah. They specifically said, well, okay, we're not taking those rooms because we don't want all this negativity coming at us. Other thing that I think, I agree, we gotta go to the state. The Howard video, who is it that, and how, that video you guys made, that blew me away. That video needs to go, I don't know if anybody saw it, about the closet. That needs to go on YouTube. It needs to get sent to all the state legislators. We need a bank of videos like that. Everybody that's challenged with a co-location or a closure needs to make videos like that show personally what's going to happen to their students. We need to shame the legislature publicly, because this has to be done, the change has to be done at the state level.
I think also in addition to that, as teachers, we wear multiple hats. You're a therapist, you are a nurse, you are a lawyer at times, you are a resource specialist. You're like finding different ways to meet the needs of your students. And I feel like in 2019, you're also a PR rep. So no one's going to say these great things are happening at your school. There isn't a PR department. Like literally, you have to rep your school, your team. Someone has to be in charge of the Instagram, someone has to be in charge of the Yelp account, someone has to be in charge of your YouTube account, because OUSD, because we're strapped for funds, they have no time or money to, or interest, to invest in telling the public about your great school and what you are doing. And personally, this is my first time being in Oakland, inside of this high school, and I'm like, wow, like I wish I knew, like I'm excited for my 8th graders. I'm like, oh, we're coming in August to check this out, because it is amazing. And unfortunately, like, I don't know about it, but that's what we have to do. That's what the new wave of fight looks like. Because it's one thing, yes, to tell the story of, like, obviously kids being put in the closet. It's horrible. It's not, it shouldn't be acceptable. It shouldn't be an American story. But unfortunately, right now, that is an American story. But to also counterbalance these other horrific things, the public needs to know the positive things. Because sometimes, like, our reputation can precede us, and it could just be another narrative. And even though I am not originally from Oakland, I'm from the Bronx, and I also understand a reputation that can precede you, be positive or negative. There is something that's known about you, but we have to be our own PR people as well. That's really good.
So I teach at Howard. My name is Yael Friedman. I'm just like really appreciating hearing all of this, because this doesn't happen really. I've been in touch with Kamisha, but it's really helpful and useful for us. So I definitely think that it's something that, like, I'm very surprised. This is my 2nd year teaching, and I was not at all involved in any union activity before the strike, and the strike was really impactful for me, and it was really impactful for our school. And just to share, like, our parents really supported us, and they supported us by not sending their kids to school, but they didn't come to the picket lines, and it was really, really hard. And our school is at the top of a hill, and it's pretty isolated, and people don't pass by there unless they're going there. And as teachers, like, a lot of us are like pretty new teachers, and we felt like we're on our own out here. And the more that we're kind of experiencing the impact of this co-location, the more I see that, like, people just need to know how to engage and need to be, like, asked, and sometimes asked a few times. And that's, like, pretty uncomfortable for me and for other teachers to be like, listen, like, I know you're busy, but, like, I really need you to come to this meeting. Like, that is something that's really challenging, and especially our school is really small. We have 1 class per grade level. But the roots of Howard are really deep, and there's people, like, I have students whose parents and grandparents went to Howard. And so, and I know that that's true at Prescott also. I'm sure that's true at West Oakland Middle School also. And so, like, on the one hand, like, yes, charter schools are targeting certain communities and certain areas, but also those are also communities where people have been living in Oakland for a really long time. Like, a lot of the other schools where this isn't happening at, like, those people aren't necessarily, like, multi-generations from Oakland. So I do think that there's, like, a lot of power in that, and I know that our parents want to protect their kids, and I know that it's important to them. And so I think for us, right now we're in a stage, we found out less than 2 months ago, basically what happened at Howard was our principal was not communicated with by the district. Our principal, the district person said to our principal in the fall, we've determined through the formula that you have 7 underutilized classrooms, in addition to the 3 that were already located by Francophone. So Francophone is on our campus, they have 3 portables, and it's fine. Like, it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't really disrupt us. They're not really in our way. Only 1 person had to move their office. It wasn't a huge disruption, because they weren't in the main school buildings. And so in the fall, the district person who's in charge of the real estate offers, contacted our principal and said, you have 7 more classrooms. And our principal was like, no, we don't. Like, that will displace classroom teachers. And so they came back and said, no, sorry, it's 4. So that, immediately hearing that to me, I'm like, what is this formula?
Yeah.
Like, how do you go from 7 to 4? It seems completely arbitrary. So that was like the first kind of red flag. And then, so our principal was like, we don't know, like maybe not. And then about 2 months ago in March, our principal found out that a final offer was made to Francophone. So no one from the district communicated with anyone, not even our principal at our school. Because they don't want us to know.
There's no requirement.
Right, and there's no transparency, there's no requirement that they need to tell us anything that's going on, any of the negotiations. And after that, the teachers were shocked. We were like, oh my God, like this means that, our reading interventionist, who is a 40+ year veteran and is just like an amazing teacher, is gonna be teaching out of a literal closet. And it was just, you've all seen the video, so I don't have to explain, but we were all really shocked. And so we kind of mobilized and we went to the board meeting of the charter school, Francophone. That was really telling, and what I will also say about that is that we definitely have a lot, of course it's not about the charter school, and the problem is that they've already told us that after next year they're gonna be too big for Howard. So, and they've already told their parents that they have their eye on Grass Valley. They've already told their parents that. This is a living, breathing school community. And they've already told their parents that that's the school that they wanna take over. So, what I think that is really important also is that we need to make it as unpleasant as possible for charter schools to take over the school. We went to their board meeting, we tried as hard as we could to shame them. They obviously still accepted the offer because they don't care. But they did put something in their acceptance letter that recognized that actually acknowledged our presence at the meeting and acknowledged that we weren't informed, and they were like, we demand transparency on the part of OUSD, which, okay, yes, you can say that, but also, it meant that they did hear us, and I think that there's a lot there to be mined. Our parents really want to go now and flyer at Francophone and have one-on-one conversations with those parents. I think that needs to be happening with all of these, just because, okay, yes, KIPP is a giant corporation. Yes, we can all say how terrible they are, but are we really, how are we, my question is, how are we engaging with those families? How much of the context do they know? I don't know the answer to that question, but I think it's really worth exploring, and I think it's something that might really bring people together, especially in communities like West and Deep East Oakland, where people have been living there for a long time. And then, so we went to the Francophone board meeting, we went to the OUSD board meeting. The OUSD board was so much pearl clutching and oh my God, children in closets. And there were all these for real. There were all these sped teachers there that were this is happening all over the district, not because of co-location.
Right.
And so it was very interesting. And so something I learned at that meeting was that they do not at all take into account in the formula. I really don't know if part of me doubts that there's even a formula at all. They're just spinning a wheel and putting their finger on a number. I don't understand. Anyway, so they said, so Sonali, who is the real estate person in OUSD, said that Roseanne Torres asked her, do you take it into account for things like special ed, which all the 3 programs being impacted, reading intervention, inclusion, and resource specialists, plus the therapist, the Ann Martin therapist who provides counseling for students on Medi-Cal. So those are the programs that are being impacted. And so she said, do you take into account in the formula the special ed? And she was like, no. And that's crazy. That is crazy. I don't know how that's legal. We had no idea of that. There was so much, every time something happens, we're how did we not know this? How did we as teachers not know this? How did our parents not know this? How were we not invited to the table? So the upshot of going to that meeting was that they came, Gary Yee and James Harris, who James Harris represents our district, District 7, came to our our school the next day and toured with the principal. And they decided that the short-term solution is that they're gonna build a wall.
What? Oh my God!
Mexico gonna pay for this.
Oh my God!
No, honestly, the irony of a French immersion school coming and displacing like children of color is like really not lost on anyone.
Right.
And when anyway, whatever. So what I was gonna say though is that they want to build. There's basically this like storage area. It was in the video, and that was going to be housing our resource specialist, our inclusion teacher, and 3 paras. So 5 adults were going to be using that room. And so now what they want to do is cordon off, build a wall between that area and the hallway, which has the staff bathroom, so that that can be private. And then one of the therapists that has a portable classroom can move in there, and that frees up a classroom. So now resource and inclusion will be able to share an actual classroom, and that they were like, you know, yay. And what's going to happen, in my estimation, is that what's going to happen is they're not going to build a wall because they're just not going to do that. And so they're just going to they're going to move the therapist in there, and then they're just going to close off the hallway, which has the staff bathroom. So it means that we're not only are we gaining 12 teachers because they're dual immersion, so each classroom of 24 children has 2 teachers. So we're getting 12 additional staff members, and we're losing a staff bathroom. So that's like the crumb that they threw at us. It's honestly, to me, like, I'm just really glad that our resource specialist is gonna have a classroom. Like, to be perfectly honest, like, to me, at this point, it's better than nothing, which is really sad. But we met with parents today, and they were really fired up, and the question that they kept saying was, the thing that they kept saying over and over was, who made this decision? Who made this decision? What is the formula? What are the numbers? Who made this decision? They just felt so disrespected, and I think that that is the question. Like, who is making these decisions? Why are the people that are impacted not invited to the table? I mean, it's what we're all thinking, but anyway, our next step is that we're meeting on Tuesday with James Harris. Parents are gonna bring their concerns directly to him. I don't know if anything is gonna come out of that, but I think that anything at this point to mobilize our parents and help them organize around this issue is good, and I'm hoping that will be galvanizing for them. Because really, I think the parents are the ones that really have the power in this situation, a lot more than teachers, a lot more than administrators. It needs to be parents that are demanding accountability. They're the ones paying taxes in the area. They're the ones electing the school board members. You know, so and I'm confident that we can do that on the long term. I'm not sure if it's going to happen for Howard this year, but I think there's just a lot that can be done.
Sorry. Does anybody know, for you or for anybody, what the history of Francophone is? Because that used to be Barack Obama, right?
No. So they are currently occupying the Toller Heights campus, which it was Toller Heights, and then what's interesting about Toller Heights is that when Toller Heights closed or got consolidated, those kids, a lot of them came to Howard, and so they have the Toller Heights campus, and it's too small for them.
So the Francophone charter school, they got their charter application about 3 years ago. When they came to the school board with their application, most of the families on the original charter actually lived in Berkeley. And when they showed up at the school board meeting, the parents that they brought out in front were French African. And so it was a bunch of French-speaking African families from Berkeley that got that first charter, and their first site was Barack Obama in Toller Heights under Prop 39.
And what's the current
So
ratio?
we got two more speakers here, and then we're gonna do some Q&A. And they've been sitting in the hot seat for a while here.
Hi everyone, I know it's getting late, so I'm gonna, my name is Shu Labien, and I'm at Elmhurst still, and I was gonna talk more about the merger, but I don't feel like that adds too much to what's already been said. But I do have experience working in charter schools, and It's a term that's been thrown around a lot, and we hear it a lot, and I want to share a little bit about what my experience was working in a charter school, and so we have a sense of, I guess, like, what the danger is to our district. And I love what you said, Gail, about, like, engaging with those teachers and engaging with those families as well, because like us, you know, they're teachers and they're exploited workers as well. And I think there's a lot of power in, a lot of them stood with us on the strike lines, and I think there's a lot of power in, like, in digging in a little bit there. So I moved to Oakland from Chicago in 2012, and I was working in charter schools at the time. As a young teacher, like back in the day, those were kind of the only jobs that were available in Chicago, because you had all these union, you know, teachers who were in the union, and it was hard to get into those like tenured jobs. So those are my options, and I eventually my contract was not renewed at the last school that I was working at. And it took a while for me to dig for a reason after they had, like, lied to us about our salaries multiple times. Like, every single year, offer letters were given out and then rescinded because they were, like, full of all these mistakes. We found out that teachers who, like, a teacher who was a first-year teacher, and it was my, like, third or fourth year teaching, she was getting paid like a couple $1,000s more than me. They didn't pay anything for additional years of education or master's degrees because their calculus was that those don't correlate to higher test scores. So these are, so I was, like, going to the strike rallies on the low. I might have lost my job for wearing red to work on Monday. I don't know, like, it was a really crazy situation. And my last year at this school, the administration of this school turned over completely, like principal, assistant principal, like front office staff, 3 times. And it was in a gentrifying part of Chicago, and eventually the parents organized and they kicked out that charter management organization, which was at that time based in New York, and they were flying into Chicago and like interrupting teachers while they were teaching and like triggering students with special needs. They had no relationship with the community, and they were running schools not only like all over Chicago, and so that was a gentrifying neighborhood. There were schools on the west and south sides of Chicago, which are black and brown neighborhoods that they're still there to this day and doing all kinds of like crazy shit. So they also made us go to pro-charter rallies in Springfield, which is a couple of hours away, like in our spare time, and lobby for more charter school funding. And they also made us ask parents during conference time to sign petitions in favor of more charter funding.
How do they actually make you do that?
Well, I refused, so that's probably why I lost my job, but they just told us that this was an expectation, and they gave us the petitions, and then they asked,
Yeah.
but I just like made an excuse and didn't do it. And just so folks know like what a charter school is, it's a school that takes public money. Sometimes it's 1-to-1. In Chicago at the time it wasn't quite 1-to-1, that's why they're trying to get more. But the district sells the charter to a private organization. So it's a privately run public school. And a lot of times, like, they're run by a charter management company, which could be it's usually a nonprofit. Sometimes they're run by law firms. In general, they're not run by educators, which is why there's more emphasis on like standardized test scores we're all in the, like, a high stakes testing universe right now. But it's also a way for private companies to profit off of public dollars because they through like construction contracts and other things like that. And we had here in Oakland, was it 2 weeks ago? Last week we had the New Schools Venture Fund meeting here for a summit. So these are billionaires who get together and like the Gates Foundation, the Bloombergs, the people connected to Betsy DeVos and the Trump administration who are advising, who are making big decisions, and they're connected with our school board, and they're advising them in all these ways to create a situation where more charter schools can be open. So Again, they're not part of our community and they are not elected, but they still have this outsized role in shaping our district. So,
Hi, so, well, my story is a little bit different.
Say your name and your school, please.
Yeah, it's Steve Young and the school's Kaiser. So, yeah, my story is a little bit different because we are threatened with being closed. And it's really the story of two schools, Kaiser and Sankofa. And I can't really speak for Sankofa because obviously Kaiser's my school, but they've had it worse than we have. At least the district had the decency to come and lie to our faces. Sankofa, I think the Sankofa teachers were told you need to come back to school after hours when they weren't getting paid one night, to be told that they were to be what they call merged. The two programs were to be merged with Kaiser. So what actually happened with us is at the end of January, we were given like 24 hours notice that the district wanted to speak to us. Within a few hours of the meeting, we got wind of what was going on, and they sent two members of staff, Yvette and Sandra Aguilera, came and they gave us a lengthy presentation. I wish you could have seen it. It was like we were winning an award. They were telling us, you're doing great. You've got high test scores. You're a diverse community. You know, your teachers stay for a long time. You know, you're a success story, an Oakland success story. And here's what we're going to do for you right now: is we're going to allow you to expand by moving you 3 miles away. I'm merging you with Sankofa. So instantly we started organising, and fortunately we had a whole bunch of bullet points that they've given us as to, because our first question was why us? Because there's a whole bunch of other schools that are much closer to Sankofa than we are. And they gave us a whole bunch of bullet points as to why us. The thing I've learned is that people in the district, they lie quite easily, but they're also not very smart. So a lot of what they said was very easy to refute. Okay, so they said that 35% of you live in the district of Sankofa, QED. So we looked up on their website, and we said, actually, according to your own statistics, and it really, a lot of what we did to refute their points was utilising their own statistics. It's 11%. And there were all sorts of different, here's why it's positive about schools merging, here's why it saves money, here's why it improves outcomes. We just went on their own websites and we thought, So our next step, I mean, like I say, within a couple of days we got a whole bunch of us in a room together and started organising. Our next step was, okay, so we can refute each and every one of these points. Let's get them in a room and let's talk to them. So our first port of call was, after a lot of emailing, a lot of badgering, our rep, Jodie London, said she would come and address us after school one day. And she brought Gary Yee with her. At this stage we were being told, well...
Can I add something?
Yes.
She's deathly afraid of the Kaiser parents. She won't come up there unless she's invited and she's got backup.
I think that's Jodie per se. You know, she's very conflict averse. You know, as well. So they came that night, and at the time we were told that this isn't a done deal. You know, you're just one of the names we're under consideration. You're part of the cohort 2. There's going to be a whole process, and we're going to vote on it down the line. But it became very clear during the address of Jodie and Gary Yee that it was a done deal. And even though it obviously wasn't their role to decide on this, it was their role to vote on whatever decision the district came to them. they were very clearly in favour of closing our school. And I actually asked Gary Yee, personally, I said, what would it take for you to vote no? If the district come to us and say, we're closing you, what would it take you to say, hang on, here's another alternative proposal? You know, how can we help you vote no? And he literally came out and said, there's absolutely nothing you could do. And the rationale he gave is because we've got an excellent superintendent in Kaiser, and we've had large turnover of superintendents over the years. It's vitally important that we keep this one. So if Kaiser wants it, I will vote yes 100% of the time. And I'm like, you could have swapped that for Antoine Wilson a few years ago, and you know, and look at what happened there. But you know, the next port of call was. It was actually on the first day of the strike, so you know, emotions were running very high that night. The district came back because we wanted them to further explain, you know, this kind of wishy-washy, factually inaccurate presentation. The district came back to address us. They brought a whole bunch of the media with them. And we had prepared a counter presentation. Kyla was going to provide us a presentation of why this had to happen, and we had a counter presentation largely based around why school closures are bad, why school closures don't need to happen, why a lot of this budget crisis is kind of illusory, why a lot of this budget crisis is your making, frankly, by not providing oversight of Antoine Wilson, and yet you wanted our kids to pay for it. So what happened was Kyla came and spoke for 20 minutes, and then we'd agreed to that we would then speak to her. Then she walked out. Yvette Renteria got up and said, oh, now we're going to do breakout sessions, which is something we've been negotiating, and said absolutely no way. So we had this wonderful situation of me and a couple of other people doing our presentation to an empty hall. Well, not an empty hall, our parents were there, no one from the district was there. And then we got the call, they're in the library. So we all ran to the library and said, what are you doing here? You know, which is straight into John Sasaki's trap, because that's the camera showing a bunch of parents getting angry and shouting, and it was all on the media that night. Look at all these people, you know. The press coverage wasn't necessarily as good as we'd have wanted. So there was that. And then what we've found since, and we've been incredibly organised, it's been parent driven, with teacher support, because our teachers, we're very fortunate that the teachers at Kaiser tend to stay, so we have teachers who've been there for 20 years, 17 years, whatever. So it's been a very synergistic approach with parents and educators have kind of worked together to, you know, coalesce and provide a rational and evidence-driven response. And what we found is every time we've gone back to them with a different story or different counter-proposal, or, you know, here's why what you said last time was wrong, it's very much like the old Groucho Marx statement where he says, you know, these are my principles, and if you don't like them, I have others. You know, they kind of say to you, you know, well, these were the arguments we gave last week, now they've changed. You know, so whatever we said the previous time, they will then think back and then, you know, throw out a different counter argument. In the meantime, we've been pursuing them for freedom of information requests. So back in 2011, we were one of the schools that were fortunate enough to escape when Santa Fe and Maxwell Park didn't. So we've always assumed that we would be on the chopping block when they came round with their, you know, with their axe next time. And there were plans drawn up with Kaiser and the district to expand on sites, much like Montclair did. You know, because we're a small school, and that for that it means we will always be under threat. So what we wanted was access to all the documents related to those plans. There are a number of other things that we've been asking for, you know, really basic stuff that you know, it's not not harming them to share with us. You know, it's maybe giving us more information than they're happy with. Every single request, John Sasaki and his office have stonewalled. They said, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have enough staff to deal with this kind of thing. So we've been basically turned down every single time. We've tried to set up further meetings with them. We find we've been excluded. You know, and I don't know if any of you know, but apparently last week there was a meeting at Jodie London's house to discuss with the parents of District 1 you know, about how badly the school closure process has been handled by OUSD. We weren't invited. I'm pretty sure no one from Sankofa were invited. So, you know, I mean, it's a case of if you're actually under the hammer, you don't get a place at the table, if I'm not mixing my metaphors too much. So, you know, despite the fact that we've been strongly organised, and we continue to be organised, and we've, you know, we've met with local representatives, we've met with, you know, different people at different agencies. We don't really feel as though we've made any dent in their pursuit of Kaiser, which is, and just as a wrap up here, the reason why they're coming for our school is because the real estate is incredibly valuable, and it is a real estate decision, despite what they say, and they're painting us out. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'll not go into that, but
That's also true for Howard.
yeah.